Join me as I show you how to make these crystal lake earrings featuring 6mm bicones and some little daggers on the bottom. Remember, if you need any supplies, go ahead and look below the video in the description. We'll put a link there to get back to our website with all the specifics. Gather up your materials and let's get started. So to begin our crystal lake earrings, we're using 6mm bicones, some 2mm bicones, a couple daggers, and some seed beads, and we're going to be working with right angle weave. So to begin, we want to take 4 beads, and I'm putting them on a size 10 beading needle with size 8 dragon thread. Now I'm using a green dragon thread. You can certainly use white. I like to use a color so that way you can see it. With this design, I would say to use the white thread. We're going to put all 4 beads down to the bottom of our piece here, and we are going to tie it into a knot. So don't overthink it. We're doing right angle weave, but we're just tying it into a knot. Now what we want to get is a diamond shape. So I'm going to flip this over here to show you that it's just that right angle weave diamond shape. So to get that right angle weave diamond shape larger, what we're going to do is we're going to go around and connect to the 4 original beads here. Going through the next bead in line, I want you to add 3 more beads. 1, 2, and 3 beads. When you add those 3 beads, go back through the bead that your thread is currently coming out of. Give a nice tight pull, making sure all that thread kind of disappears. Now you're going to sew over to the next bead in the original 4 units. 4 bead unit rather. From here coming out, we're going to do again 1, 2, and 3 beads. Just like normal right angle weave, your needle and thread are going to go into the bottom of the bead that your thread is coming out of. So it's going right into that bead there, and you're going to create your next right angle unit. So see how I spun this. Spin it, go through your next bead in your original 4 beads, and then once again do the same thing. Bringing the camera in a little bit closer so you can see that focus. 1, 2, 3 more beads. Go into the bead your thread is coming out of and bring those beads into your right angle loop. Go into the 4th and final bead from your original 4 set here. Try not to get your needle caught into your pliers sitting next to your bead area. And from here, we are once again going to do the same thing. So I've got 1, 2, and 3 more beads. Sewing into the bead that I'm currently coming out of and finishing off that right angle weave. Now to tighten this up, I'm going to go around the center 4 beads one more time. 1, 2, so those 4 that sit in the center, we're going through all of those. Spinning around 3 and 4. After going through that 4th bead, what we're going to do is work our way to the outer edge. Along the outer edge here, I'm going to go into the top of this right angle unit right here. So I'm coming out the bead right here from the center unit of 4. I'm going to go through the top bead along that right angle unit. And now we're going to go along the kind of outside edge and add in 11 O's. 11 O gets added, and I go into the next bead in that right angle unit that my thread's currently in. Add a bead, go through the bottom bead of that right angle unit. Add a bead, and we're going to catch on to this bottom right angle unit. So I'm going to add a bead, and I'm going to go from the top to the bottom of the bead that sits on the right hand furthest side. That puts that bead in that center and just kind of fills that empty space. Add a bead, go through the bottom. So we're going to go around the whole piece connecting these units together. Adding a bead when you're at the bottom or at the corners, and then in between here, adding an 11O and jumping over to the next right angle weave unit. This fills in that negative space with some seed beads while actually strengthening the project. And then these 11O seed beads that are along the side of the project are what we're actually going to be catching into when we add our additional seed beads and our additional crystals. So going around here, you can see we're just spinning around, adding the 11 O's around all of the beads that sit around the outer edge, connecting one to the other. As you spin around them, you're going to finish up by adding the bead here to the center, going back through the bead that your thread was originally coming out of before you added that first 11 O. And here we are around the top. You can see the 11 O's between each of the pieces here in each of those units. I want you to bring your needle and thread through the 11 O here at the bottom, and we are going to create our dagger section here. So the daggers, I'm using some Czech daggers in Aqua. They're approximately 7 by 17 millimeter, but just like the ones for the Gerber daisy, they're a little bit different in size. I'm playing to that advantage, putting a smaller one in the middle. I'm gonna add an additional 11 O seed bead, add my bigger dagger, smaller one in the middle, bigger dagger on the side, and I'm gonna add another 11 O, and we're gonna sew into the 11 O that sits on the opposite side of that 6 millimeter bead. Nice and simple and quick. You've got that little fringe on the bottom. From here, we're gonna sew up through the crystal that sits on the left of this bottom right angle unit, and we are going to sew through the 11 O that sits right after it. Coming out that 11 O that sits right after it, I want you to add 1 and 2 11 O's, then your 2 millimeter bicone crystal, and then 2 more 11 O's. Going on a diagonal, I want you to go through the seed bead from the bottom towards the top that sits diagonal on this left hand unit. So you're going up towards the top through that 11 O seed bead. Keep those seed beads to the front of the design, and that adds the crystals along the front there. What we're going to do now is go through the bicone, just like we were when we were adding the seed beads. Go through the seed bead that sits after that bicone, and basically we're just bringing our needle and thread and getting it right there at the top, coming out of the 11 O seed bead. At the top here now, before we come down and decorate the opposite side and add a couple more seed beads on, we are going to put on our wire guard. So a wire guard, if you've never used it, you don't need it. You can certainly do a jump ring if you want to, a closed jump ring, not an open one, use a closed one. The wire guards are great because they make a nice finished end. You're going to add your 2 seed beads, go into the top of the wire guard, come down the bottom of the wire guard, which is a little U-channel shaped metal piece that keeps your thread from rubbing along your ear wires or your clasps. Add 2 more 11 O seed beads, sew down through the 11 O bead, after the 6 millimeter bead after, the 11 O after that 6 millimeter bead, bringing that right to the center there. Then we're going to sew out to the outer edge, going through the 6 millimeter here on the right hand side, and then letting your thread exit after the 11 O. Once you're done exiting after the 11 O, go ahead and add 1 and 2 more 11 O's, followed by another one of your 2 millimeter crystals. These also look a little bit like mermaid's tails. Another 2 11 O's, and then just like we did here, we're going into that bead that sits on a diagonal from the top towards the bottom. And that decorates the opposite side. From here, we want a little overhang of crystal that kind of sits at the bottom there. So from here, we're going to add 2 more 11s, 1 more of our 2 millimeter crystals, 2 more 11s, and then we're going to go over into that seed bead that sits along that outer edge there prior to the 11s going up the side. So remember I said we were going to catch on to all those 11 O's, and look how that just pretty decorates the bottom of the design, and it just kind of hangs down there and sits in that empty space. From here, we're gonna go up and do the same thing along the top after reinforcing the wire guard. So, how to get there? Coming out of that 11-0 seed bead, go ahead and go back through the 11, 11 crystal 11, 11. That sit along that right angle unit there. Go back through the 11 right after it, and then once again through the 6mm bicone. Back through the 11-0 seed bead, just like we were when we were getting ready to add the wire guard. Up through the bead, through the seed bead, once again through the wire guard, reinforcing, going through the 11-0s leading up to it, going through the wire guard and around, coming down the other side of the wire guard, making sure when you do so that as you pull your thread, it sits in that little U channel there. From here, go through the 11-0 seed beads as well as the 11-0 after those two seed beads. And when you're exiting, here's your time to add your crystals along the top. So once again, 2 11s followed by 1 crystal followed by 2 11s. Back in then to the seed bead that sits on the left-hand side of the very top bicone. These seed beads then, just like the bottom section, hang right in front of that right angle unit. Now what we need to do to finish off our crystal lake earrings is to go back into the middle and reinforce the center one more time and the outer edge. I'm going from that 11-0 into the 6mm bead, and then I'm going to go back through the 6mm beads and the seed beads along the outer edge to stiffen up the design a little bit. We often get inquiries for different patterns and different jewelry. How do I make my project a little stiffer? This is a great place to go in and to address that. So taking another pass of thread along the piece will automatically stiffen it up because you've got more thread in the piece. Using a thicker thread also sometimes is the answer. So if you have a thinner thread and you're like, man, this just isn't connecting right, chances are you might want a thicker thread. So if you're using a 6, switch to an 8, and so on. After you get around the entire piece here, you're going to take your starter thread that has the knot attached to it towards the back of the design. Get to a place where your thread ends are in the exact same place. So we're just pretending that I went the whole way around here, strengthening it up a little bit. I'm going to go around the center loop. The right angle weave is really forgiving. You can always take your needle and thread around that right angle weave loop, that original one. Get those thread ends together, coming out the exact same spot there. Take your hands, knot those 2 thread ends together, and simply burn down the thread towards the back of the project. If you want this to have the seed beads and the crystals stand out a little bit more, you can certainly do so and post a picture of your product and project in our Facebook group for beading and jewelry making. I would love to see these crystal lake earrings in another set of colors and can't wait to see what you guys come up with. So many different options for where you can take seed beads and what you can use along the bottom. As we get to the top, what we're going to do is attach our ear wires onto the top. I'm going to get my 2 ear wires here out of my container, grab my pliers, open up my ear wires by turning to the side so that way my loop, that little oval, is not obscured. Go in, turn it back, and your earrings are all ready to wear. Again, these are 6mm bicones. You can certainly do the same thing with 4s if these are a little bit too big for you. And you can even connect these if you want to. Like I said, I can't wait to see how you change out the bottoms. Thanks so much for joining me in these crystal lake earrings. It is a fun play on a not really shiny and blingy event here with that crystal lake. As always, Post your pictures in our Facebook group for beading and jewelry making. I can't wait to see all the different color variations and even size variations. Remember, if you do make some changes, please comment below and let other viewers know those changes so that way you can help out this amazing beading community. As always, hit the subscribe button if you haven't yet, and stay tuned for more inspirational designs.